and Rob McGregor welcome you to a place where all kinds of phenomena flourish. Voices whisper ancient secrets, signs and symbols are abundant. UFOs, ETs, ghosts, and even the dead move about freely. Here we meet authors, researchers, and investigators of the mysterious, the strange, and of the inexplicable anomalies that surround us. Step out of the everyday world and take a journey into the mystical underground.
Welcome to the Mystical Underground. Thank you for joining us. This is Trish McGregor and
Rob McGregor.
And our tech magician, John Posey. You can go to themysticalunderground.com where we make regular blog posts and where you can find out about our books. Among them are Phenomena, Harnessing Your Psychic Abilities, The Secrets of Spirit Communication, Sensing the Future, and Aliens in the Backyard. Our most recent book is called Mind-Blowing Synchronicities, the latest science stories and research. Trisha's latest novel is White Crows, and Rob's most recent novel is called Tulpas. If you're watching us on YouTube, we would appreciate if you would take a second to click the like, subscribe, and notification button so you never miss an episode. If you prefer to listen to the show, it's available wherever you listen to podcasts. Please subscribe there. If you'd like to have your birth chart done, contact me through the YouTube channel. Rob.
Okay. Our guest today is Maureen St. Germain. She's the founder of the St. Germain Mystery School, the Ascension Institute Mystery School, and Akashic Records International. She is also the creator of more than 30 guided meditation CDs and is the author of 8 books. And the latest one is called Living Your Best 5D Life, published by Bear & Company. It's the third book of her 5D series and follows Mastering Your 5D Self and Waking Up in 5D. That book was voted best-selling book in 2017 by independent booksellers, and another of her books, Opening the Akashic Records, won Book of the Year from the Coalition of Visionary Resources. Maureen lives near Sedona, Arizona, and offers workshops worldwide. Welcome, Maureen.
Thank you.
Yay!
Thank you for having
And
me.
today you're in Las Vegas. This is
That's right.
confusing.
Today I'm attending. I'm a student in a class in Las Vegas.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so let's start with
Rob, your volume is low. Your volume.
I was trying to jump in there without interrupting anything, but yeah, there you go. You're good now.
Okay.
All right,
yeah,
you're
that's
good.
better.
Now, okay. Let's start with the question of what is 5D? How is it different from 3D, and what happened to 4D?
I like it. 5D is, in simple terms, it's what the traditions teach us is heaven. So it's the equivalent of where we make good decisions, we have experiences, and we are able to take steps that are beneficial and creative. 3D is the place where we're allowed to make mistakes, and we call those mistakes bad or wrong, good or right or wrong. And in 5D, the possibility of doing something that's harmful or hurtful isn't a choice that exists. So you have lots of freedom and creativity, but the choices to be harmful or hurtful doesn't exist. In 3D, that's allowed. And what people are beginning to understand is that in 3D, that was to help us expand and know more by being allowed to make choices that might not be 100% aligned with source. 4D is the dimension of transformation or transmutation. You could even call it the zone of transportation, because it is the place you go to get somewhere else. So it's like going to Grand Central Station in New York. You would never go there to spend the night. You go to an airport to get somewhere else. So 4D is like those places that are in the nexus between two important places. And in 4D, we have the tendency to be very high emotion, very high activity. Things move very quickly. So we don't stay there very long. We usually slide back into third, or we slide up to fifth. And that's another thing about fifth. It's not a place you go to. It's simply a vibrational data set that you level up to, and we don't get to stay there. We stay there until somebody pushes our buttons or, creates a trigger for us, and then we fall back into third dimension. So it's a sine wave but it's all, the trajectory of the sine wave is still upwards.
Okay.
Well,
So
how does your new book, Living with Your Best 5D Life, build on the other two dimensions?
Well, all three are about the fifth dimension. And the first one was the wake-up call to help people understand that the things that were happening to them were legitimate and that they weren't going crazy, helping them to understand that they were becoming much more aware and having experiences of things happening a certain way. And then so each of these books built upon that knowledge base. And then I expanded the knowledge base and told people more tools and more ideas on how to interact and operate. And along with all of those tools are these amazing meditations that have come through me. I write the background music and I write the script and record them. They're also on the app, Illuminate. So these are transition tools that help people stay in their higher vibration. And so the current one introduces a new Merkaba, the 8D Merkaba, which allows us to step outside of the matrix. And the previous book, Mastering Your 5D Life, introduced the 5D Merkaba. So each of these have different levels of knowledge and expansion. So if you were a person that wanted to start at the beginning, you would start with waking up in 5D. But at the same time, we wrote the last book in a way that you'd get enough of this basic information or references to it that you could manage.
Yeah. You have a lot of interesting meditations and also some channeled messages that are really interesting. You can just kind of open the book in different places and just read these stories. It's fascinating. I'm going to put it by my bedside for good bedside reading. And you have a little prayer for going to sleep too, which I can always use.
Yes, and I still use that every day.
Yeah.
I recommend people print it out and leave it by the bedside and say it out loud.
Yeah.
In the early years, I would say it to myself. And then I involved my husband and got him to say it with me. But then we decided to do call and response. And that's really the best way. So if you're a couple and you're both willing to do the prayer, do call and response, meaning I'm getting a good night's rest. I'm getting a good night's rest. And so you hear it twice.
Oh, okay.
So
Nice.
one is auditory,
Interesting.
what it's speaking, and the reading is there as well. So it's
Yeah.
very powerful.
The problem with us is he goes to bed earlier.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
you
an
just
early
go-
bird.
but go to
Yeah.
go to the bedroom with him, say the prayer, and then go back and do your stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So how does your book then help people understand their experiences with multiple versions of reality? That seems like that could be kind of confusing.
It is confusing, and the metaphors that I share really help people get it. So, for example, for many years, you've been able to get a TV that would allow you to have a picture in a picture. So you'd have a little version of another station and the big version of the station you're watching. So you could keep track of a football game and a basketball game at the same time if you wanted to. So that's multiple versions of the reality. Where do you have your dial tuned to? And that kind of helps people. And also a lot of ideas that I present are earth-shattering. So for example, there's a whole concept of more than one version of you. And I explain in Waking Up in 5D how there could be more than one version of you, how I was shown by my guides that person and that person are the same soul. And then, of course, you get into the bigger teaching of the monad and the expressions at the soul level, and how those work. And it helps to have people to give a framework so people can begin to comprehend. One of my students went to a lecture by a well-known doctor named Simq, and he was teaching on the principle of the fact that the revolutionary individuals that were part of the American Revolution, so, George Washington, Martha Washington, and that whole crew are back. The revolutionaries are back. And so she went to his lecture. I had told her about his book in class and explained the principle of multiple versions of you and how another version of you might show up to help you on a certain stage of your life, and then they would disappear and you would wonder, well, what happened to them? And they were only supposed to be there for a short while to help you. And it really is another version of you coming in to help you. So she runs this by him after the lecture and asks him what he thinks. And this is a guy who specializes in reincarnation of well-known people. And he's a medical doctor. And he said, I totally believe that. And then he proceeds to tell her a story about how he met a man, a fellow MD. He was giving a lecture in Hong Kong. This man from India came up to him after the lecture. They had an instant connection. They started comparing notes and discovered, for example, that one of the categories of study that Dr. Simq had set aside, the doctor from India had picked up. And so my metaphor,
interesting.
Yeah, my metaphor for this is, okay, so we meet once a month for coffee in the sky, somewhere in the ether. And I don't want to do this job anymore. You want to take it?
So these are physical people.
These are physical people. Yeah. Other versions of you can be another gender. It doesn't have to be your gender. And some of them look like you, but a lot of them don't look like you.
So there's just there would be an instantaneous recognition, like you said, if it's part.
And the recognition isn't that, oh, you're another version of me. Oh, no.
Yeah.
The recognition is, we have a lot in common. We should get to know each other like that.
And is their version of reality, are they in 3D reality as the same way as we are?
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Wow.
Yeah. You could call up another version on the phone.
That's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And
I'm going to read another. Yeah.
A man that I am good friends with has told me about this other man that they kept crossing paths, but a few years would go by, and then they'd run into each other in Costco, some random thing. And so this year, these two men are working together and they look like each other. And they're very comfortable with each other, and they're the same soul.
Jeez.
Same oversoul, I should say. Same oversoul.
Yeah. Does this doctor, who's the reincarnation guy, and the Indian guy still stay in touch?
No, but you could find him on the web, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. He's pretty well known. I can give you that information again if you want.
So you also write about 8D. What is that doing? What's the, how does that fit with 3D, 4D, 5D? And
okay, higher up the ladder.
3D, in 3D, we are coming from another dimension, a higher dimension, and projecting ourselves onto the screen of reality. And that's the first big aha. Oh my God, I'm not fully here. No, you're just, think of you being in a movie watching what's on the screen. You are in the movie theater, whatever's going on on the screen, whether it's funny or scary, you're going to react. So there's this relationship of participation, full participation when you're in the film, and you forget that you're in your chair. And then you shift your awareness when the movie's over and you put your awareness back here. So higher dimensions are coming in to your awareness as you progress energetically into higher realms. So your capacity to experience these higher realms increases with your spiritual mastery.
Okay.
Well, how does this apply to humanity? I mean, are we evolving? I hope.
I believe humanity is shifting. I believe that everyone is going to be fifth dimensional, whether they're ready or not. My guides have shown me that we are all shifting and becoming our ascended master self. But that doesn't mean we're going to be, not moving anymore, not experiencing anymore. It's more like when you go to the regular grocery store, you have a choice between things that are good for you and things that you know are not good for you. Sometimes we buy the stuff that's not good for us because we have a hankering for chips or whatever. So, but in 5D, a lot of those choices that are not good for us don't exist. They're just not there. But we still have lots of choice, you see? So imagine going to your regular grocery store and everything on the shelf is good for you.
That'd be interesting. Okay, how can I do this? Well, I mean, is this a collective thing with humanity or what? How does this work?
Well, in Mastering Your 5D Self, I explain how there's 3 Earths. And there's an Earth version that's going to be crash and burn. And these are people who are inherently evil and do not wish to let go of that. You know, it's the person who put on the Darth Vader costume and had so much fun, he refuses to take it off. And that's the crash and burn version. Then there's the do-over version, and that's the version of reality. The second one is the version of reality where there are good people, but they refuse to accept that they are more than their human self. They've said this is all there is. And they might be good people, they might have a good religious belief, you know, some kind of practice, but they cannot wrap their brain around the possibility that they are greater than their physical body. And then the third one is the ascending Earth. Now, what I have been shown is that the 2 Earths, the do-over Earth and the ascending Earth, will continue to interact with one another for another 20 years. So by osmosis, hopefully, all of us are going to shift and change. One of the principles of my teachings is the idea that we each have a higher self. We can access that higher self and put it to work for ourselves. In so doing, we bring that aspect of who we are into our present expression. So what that does for us is allows us to become the ascended master self. This has never been done before, where the full integration of the divine self is in a physical body. So it's a big deal. Yeah.
How do ETs fit into this, or do they?
They do fit into this because ETs are involved in the architecture of humanity. And there are many ETs that are inherently interested in the progress of humanity, but they're a little bit like grandparents, concerned grandparents. They carry interest, they come and assist wherever possible and where they're asked, but they don't intervene otherwise. There are malevolent ETs that have ignored cosmic law and have intervened inappropriately, and those beings are being curtailed. So their ability.
By what?
There was a war in heaven. You don't want to get into this, I don't think.
This is fascinating.
These guys lost, but they're still here in the free will zone, because in the free will zone, certain things can't be controlled. But the ability to interact with humans has changed. And so there is a little more oversight. It's a little bit like the classroom getting a little out of hand. And so the parents take turns showing up and just sitting in the back of the room. The vibe changes.
It's interesting that you mentioned this war in heaven, because I do a lot of ghostwriting, and I'm writing a book where it's a big part of the book is about this war in heaven, and the characters are the devil, God, Malaka, who is like a version of the devil, but who wants total annihilation of everything, where the devil just wants to keep things going. And then there's the ineffable, who is above God and is all that is, basically. And that's
fiction, I hope.
what's that? It's fiction. I hope so.
Maybe.
Yeah. But
Wow.
but it's that whole war, of course, is reflected as above, so below, what's going on Earth in this book, and I don't want to get into that because it's pretty bad.
Exactly. It's a pretty giant subject that we don't need to talk.
Right. Yeah. So, how about children? How does the 5D reflect with children? How can they are they involved with it, or do they?
Well, I raised 4 sons.
Mhm.
And what's happening with the children is many are coming in as masters. So if you can imagine a parent being the parent of an ascended master and not knowing it, okay, that would be really awesome, crazy, nuts. And so the way, if you're a parent listening, the way to know whether or not your child is one of those is they're fearless. And their fearlessness.
Okay, Rob, that's Megan.
Yeah, right.
We have a daughter who's pretty fearless.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, because they're fearless, they do not follow the rules. They're not willing to take direction. And if you say to them, well, you're not allowed to do that, that has zero meaning to them. It's like it goes right past them. It's like you're speaking a foreign language. It's not that they're dismissing you or ignoring you. They just, it doesn't connect for them. So the way to get their cooperation as children is to put your hands on their shoulders, and that connects your heart with their heart. And then you tell them how their actions will affect others. So let's say they're lighting matches in the bedroom, and you're trying to get them to understand you can't do that. One way, of course, would be to give them a box of matches and make them light all of them with your supervision. Maybe they get tired of it, or maybe not. You know, some kids are fire keepers, and they just need to do that. But you put your hands on their shoulders and you say, this is what could happen. And if other kids see you doing this, they might copy you, and they're not you. They don't have the same skills you do, and they don't have the ability to fix it if it's a problem. So the reason to not do it is that other people might get hurt. Now, what's interesting is these masters, these little masters, really care about other people. So giving them a rule to follow, just to follow because that's how we operate, doesn't work for them. But if you explain to them, this is going to cause an impact. Another thing with children, I told all my children, I never taught them to say, you're sorry. Have you ever seen kids where the parents say you're sorry? Mm-hmm. Say you're sorry. And you can just see the child kind of digging their heels in. They're not going to say they're sorry. I always taught my children to say, are you okay? When you say, are you sorry, to say you're sorry, you're making a pecking order, and the victim is on top and the perpetrator's on the bottom. Whereas when you ask as a perpetrator, are you okay? You're at parity. And then you're inviting the other person to say their piece. No, it hurts. I'm bleeding, something like that. And it allows then for validation and recognition. And then the perpetrator may actually want to say, I'm really sorry, or I didn't mean to do that, or I didn't know that would happen. So this whole idea of teaching children to say, I'm sorry for every little thing is not the thing. You really want to teach them to ask, are you okay? Because it invites equality rather than disparity.
Now, what do your sons do? Are they into the same type of thinking?
They're not into any of this. It's funny. It's the bane of my parents. I told them to think for themselves. And I shared a lot of the things that I know and teach. And I brought them up to believe those things. But as adults, they've chosen otherwise. And I think part of it is because I wasn't afraid to be different. I wasn't put off at all by being ostracized for my thoughts or my beliefs. But most kids like to fit in. And so they've fallen in with whatever's going on. But they're they're good to me. They're kind. They speak to me. They listen when I have a little rant about, spirituality, but I try to keep that distance, and I encourage them to make their own decisions. And, one time we were driving back from a college interview, and one was a small college that one of my sons was going to go to, and the other one was a party school. But they were both good schools, and they both had this, the program he wanted. And I kind of thought he wanted the party school, not because it was a party school, but because it had maybe a little bit better program. And I said to him on the way home, I'm sure you can see that I'd really like you to go to this school, but it's really your decision. So don't let my opinion influence your choice. And he said, don't worry, Mom, I won't.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's when you know something's going on.
Yeah.
Well,
What about your husband?
teach them to think for themselves and to speak their truth.
Yeah.
The other thing I did is I never punished them for telling me what they'd done. They got in trouble if they hid it. So, if you got in trouble at school, come home and tell me before I hear about it from the principal's office. If I hear from the principal's office, now you got 2 punishments, them and me. So they would come home and tell me what happened.
Yeah, I think our daughter Megan, I think she picked us her parents because she is very much involved in this. She was a teenager and she used to go to Esther Hicks channeling Abraham by herself as a teenager, and and she'd be the
And
youngest.
she still
one.
goes.
Yeah, and she does. And she'd be the youngest one there,
Fabulous.
Yeah. So,
What about your husband? Is he also involved in this?
Well, my husband is into this work, but it's not their father.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So you were given the nickname the Practical Mystic in a book called Famous Wisconsin Mystics, although you're not from, are you from Wisconsin?
I used to live in,
Okay. You got to.
when that book was written, 30 some
Yeah.
years ago, that's when they, gave me that nickname.
Okay, yeah. So what does a practical mystic mean exactly, and what does a practical mystic do?
The idea of a practical mystic is that I'm not satisfied just to know stuff. I want to find practical ways to use it. So, for example, when I teach the higher self connection and I teach people how to acquire 100% accuracy, then I turn around and say, use it when you're parenting your kids and you don't know what to do. Use it when you're cooking in your kitchen. You see, these are practical applications of a spiritual tool.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So do you consider
How do
yourself?
you use it in cooking? Wait, I'm curious. How do you use this in cooking?
Well, let's say
Example.
I'm making, the other day I was making pizza sauce, and I'm not a pizza eater, but my husband likes pizza. So I was making this for him, and I started out with some canned tomatoes and sauce, and I asked my higher self what herbs to put in, and I was told. So my higher self said, put some dried basil in, and then go out in your garden and get some fresh basil, so you have both. And I was told the exact amounts, like a half a teaspoon of this and a teaspoon of that. It's very
Okay, so now does everybody have a team of guides like this that they can
Yes.
tap into?
Yes, absolutely. Now, I have a permanent guide that I was told about, and I do work with that guide extensively, but everyone can learn to connect with their higher self. And the big difference between angels and your guides and your higher self is important. There's a big distinction here, because a lot of people do have angels or guides that tell them things, but they haven't connected with their own higher self. And your higher self is you, that's fully plugged into Source or God, and has awareness of what you care about and also what's going on in the reality. So it's like it's got the full spectrum, like a really good personal assistant. So what happens is your higher self will tell you, once you build this connection, you spend 45 days doing a certain practice, and then from then on, your higher self might come in without you asking and tell you something. And I'll give you a funny example. One day, years and years ago, when I was still working in the corporate world, I was driving home from work, and the grocery store was on my way home. So my higher self tells me to stop at the grocery store. So I said, okay, fine, I'll go in the grocery store. I don't feel like going in the grocery store because I'm tired and hungry and I want to get home and cook dinner for my kids. I was a single parent at that point. And Okay, what am I here for? Tuna fish. I don't need tuna fish. Now because I was so busy, I actually wrote menus for my home, and then I would do my grocery shopping based on the menus that I wrote. And so I wouldn't have to think when I got home from work. I'd know this is what I'm making. So when I said I don't need tuna fish, my guide said, yeah, but you're planning on making tuna fish casserole tonight, right? Yes. Buy tuna fish. Okay, fine. I'll buy the tuna fish. So I buy the tuna fish. I get home. I put the noodles on. And if you know the sequence, you're kind of staggering what you're doing. So, you start the noodles, and then you find the can of mushroom soup and the tuna fish. I mean, this is a standard classic American recipe. So I pull out the can of soup and I go for the tuna fish, and it's not there. So fortunately, I just bought tuna fish. I didn't have to go back out. So I proceed, and maybe later in the week when I'm helping one of the boys clean under their bed, I find an empty can of tuna fish. I don't know whether they got it, but the point is, it wasn't no longer available for my casserole. And the benefit of something as simple as that is that if I had come home and put the noodles on, and then opened the cupboard to look for the tuna fish, and it wasn't there, I would have either had to change the menu, change plans, or I'd have to go back out and get tuna fish. And when you have
Interesting.
3 or 4 hungry kids, you don't want to have anything stand in the way of what needs to happen. Like, I don't know about you, have just one offspring?
What daughter?
Yeah.
Well, when you have 4, there's a lot that can happen. And I go into their bedrooms at night after they've gone to bed and clear a path to the bed so that if something were to happen in the middle of the night, I had a clear path unobstructed with toys or clothes or whatever. Because
Tuna cans.
or tuna cans. So that, the whole idea of the practical part of the mystical stuff is really valuable. And then, of course, all these tools will actually help elevate you to your higher self. Because when we connect with our higher self, what happens is we're building that connection so that our higher self can easily become us. Mm-hmm. See, we're elevating ourselves. Maybe we're sliding into the higher self. But the point is, with this higher self connection, the familiarity is there, and it's an easy connection. And like I said before, this has never happened in all of consciousness, where the highest version of the self would be integrated in the physical body.
That's interesting.
Have you met your other self? Like this?
Have I met other versions of me? Yeah.
Yeah, you have, and you knew them immediately.
Well, you don't use them. They're other people, just like you and I.
No, I know.
So
no, I said, but you recognized each other.
Yeah. Oh, well, they don't always recognize it because they don't have the awareness. What happened to me is I was shown this person, this person, this person, and how they were all the same. They weren't the same age, but they were all men. They had different kinds of things that connected them. And so what would happen is you would see something that would trigger your awareness. For example, I had 2 men that were both born in Tokyo, 2 Japanese men born in Tokyo. One man lived in New York, the other in Seattle. They had taken classes from me. They were now going to come to Egypt with me. And I decided to put them in the same room. At this point, I already knew that they were the same soul, but I didn't say anything. It's not my place. So, but because they were both Japanese, I thought they'd enjoy each other's company. One was short and petite, like that style of Japanese culture. And then the other guy was more like a bigger man, like a sumo guy. And so they didn't look like each other. And because one was living in Seattle and the other in New York, it was kind of unusual, but they came to me on the Egypt trip and said, we figured out that we're the same soul.
Oh,
so it's
wow.
not to tell people, but if I expose them to the information that this is possible, and you could meet another version of yourself. And what happens is there's an overlap, and it's a nice overlap because the oversoul has this big mission, and then, it's parsed out into very little divisions, And then, there's overlap where you can come in and help another version of you. So I can be helping another version of me, or another version of me could come in and be of assistance to me. Or just a good friend. Sometimes that's all it is. It's the friendship.
So can you explain the difference between the oversoul and the higher self then?
So the higher self would be directly connected to the oversoul and source.
But the oversoul would have many different individuals associated with it, right? Not just
kind of like a jellyfish. If you can imagine a jellyfish as one being, and then the tendrils on a jellyfish being each of your expressions.
Right. So, yeah. Okay. Right. So do you consider yourself a psychic, a medium, a source channel? What would
a practical mystic?
Mystic. It's funny. I have a friend whose husband passed away, and she said to me, "Can you connect, with dead?" And I said, "Yeah, but that's not my specialty. You need a medium for this." And I do have, I have had experiences where people who have passed have come through me. But like I said, that's not my specialty. I focus on knowledge and translating spiritual understanding into practical terms to be applicable for everyday use and for everyday people.
Let me ask you a question. You said that this is going to take place over the next 20 years. I find this, as an astrologer, I find this fascinating because Pluto has entered Aquarius, where it's going to be for the next 20 years.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Aquarius
I said it is a 40-year deal. So we're halfway there. Yeah. And it's nice to know that there's a confirmation from the astrology. That's very cool.
So when did all this start for you? As a child or?
Yeah, I was born awake. I often did things that were pretty outrageous. As a kindergartner, you know how they like to make sure the kids know stuff. And I was being quizzed on my phone number and my address. And after the second question, and at first I didn't know either one of those, by the way. And I looked at the teacher and I said, "Why are you asking me these questions when you have the answers right in front of you?"
What did the teacher
it was
say?
beyond my comprehension that I needed to know this. Why would I need to know it? People take care of me. I'm sick. Come on.
How did your parents deal with you?
I was very fortunate. My mother was very plugged in. She had the gift and often saw things, but they were good Catholics. So they, went with the Catholic way, and they kind of supplemented on the side. My father and mother both went to learn from Jose Silva and brought me a book
interesting.
signed by him. And my father knew how to go into the body, but one of his test cases in class was a woman who had cancer, and he could see the cancer, and he did not want to be the person to tell her. He shut it down because he didn't want to be the conveyor of bad news.
Yeah. We had a friend who's passed now, but she told us as a child, she was medium, and she told us as a child she had these abilities, but she learned to keep her mouth shut because one time in class she told her teacher that, you're going to have a flat tire, and the teacher just kind of ignored her. And 2 days later, the teacher goes out to the parking lot, and she has a flat tire, and so she thought the little girl had gone out there and let the air out of the tire, right. So she got like suspended out of school, and she had and she. I remember her telling us she at that time she thought everybody had these abilities, and then she realized that they didn't. So better keep.
And that was true for me too. I thought everybody could see and know what I could see and know, and I didn't understand right away. But as a young adult, I remember telling my father, well, first of all, I was aware that I was being watched as a child, but I wasn't afraid. It wasn't like a fear base. I knew that there were benevolents that were watching me, And I knew that there were non-benevolents that were watching me. And as a 20-something, I remember my father saying, honey, I believe you. When I was telling him about one of my guides, he said, but don't tell anybody else.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I kind of kept my mouth shut because it's funny. In high school, because I knew so much, I would wait to speak up until everybody else had said what they were going to say. And then I would say my thing. And that led to me being voted most likely to succeed in my class. And there were like 200 kids in that class. But when I went to a class reunion, one of the women who, was trying to help make sure I came, she was leading a little meditation group. And she had looked me up and she had, looked into my books, and she said, Maureen, I don't think anybody is going to understand what you're doing. And I said, yeah. And I won't bother trying to tell them. We'll just, see how they're doing and talk to them. And I'm a firm believer that when people are ready, they will shift and change. And, I think all of my sons have the gift. And I think part of their resistance to me and it is that they don't want to be weird like their mom.
Yeah.
I'm laughing because Megan has said that to me.
Yeah. Well, she's always been interested in all this stuff.
Yeah, no, she has.
Yeah. And a daughter can be a little more vocal about these things, but guys, they just have to keep they don't have to, but they choose their mouth closed. But I have granddaughters that are chip off the block. Yeah. And it's really funny.
That's great.
When she was a little kid, Trish and I would be watching the X-Files, and she always wanted to watch the X-Files, and she'd immediately fall asleep, but she always had to be there to watch the X-Files. And then as an adult, she started going back and actually watching these shows that she had, been there, but not there, and had a fascination with it. When I was young, I always had an interest in mysteries of the unknown, and I thought everybody did, but found out now that everybody's interested in UFOs and ghosts and that sort of thing. That it always surprised me that. So I'd kind of learned for a while to keep my mouth shut. And Trish and I, before we met, we were all surrounded by people who had no interest in any of this stuff until we met each other. And then we found out we had both been reading these Jane Roberts books.
Jane Roberts, way back.
Yeah, and that was our connection that got us together. I have one other question. We're coming to the end of our hour, but you, the end of your book, you have some interesting entries about the golden sheets. Can you talk about what the golden sheets are?
Yes, this is another thing, I stuck my neck out. So about 10 years ago, I was channeling probably Sanu Kumar or somebody, and they brought in these beings called the golden sheets, and they look like bed sheets, but they're sheer, a little bit like maybe saran wrap, and they can surround something with this beautiful gold energy, but it makes you less of a threat to your enemies. So it makes all your big light, you've been around people where they've got entities or energies in them that are so challenged by your presence, by your light, that, there's always trouble brewing. And so the golden sheets make your power and your light less visible to those who would make trouble for you, or to those who would consider themselves your enemy. You might not see that person as your enemy, but they see themselves as your enemy. And so they're going to do stuff. And so the golden sheets came in and explained who they were. And at the time, I channeled the information, brought it in, but then I forgot about it and I didn't put anything in on it. And then about 4, maybe 5 days later, one of my students was listening to one of my channeled messages, and she said, "What's the story with the golden sheets?" So I went back and started asking what they were, asking for more information. And that's why there's quite a bit of information now on the golden sheets. So very powerful being. They are like a wind shear. And if you know what a wind shear is, it can stop a tornado. Okay. That's how powerful they are. And that's what they wanted us to understand, that they've come directly from source to give us a big boost so that we don't have to walk around being afraid of random attacks. People don't like the way we dress or the way we talk or the things we talk about.
Yeah. Interesting.
I think we could use some of those golden sheets, Rob.
Yeah. But people are much more open to mysticism, the mystical, and the paranormal now than they were like 20, 30 years ago. And I don't feel like I'm being attacked by people like in the past, in the 80s, 90s. People would just come after us, one of our neighbors, not exactly a neighbor, but lived close by, the amazing Randy, this magician. He
Skeptic.
was a very strong skeptic, and he had other followers of his followers who would go after people who would have any interest in pursuing these ideas. And we had one guy who was very good with computers, and he just destroyed like 4 of our computers. And he just really gave, I had one psychic tell me that guy, you're lucky he lives in Massachusetts, because he would become right after you and could kill you. That's how vicious some people are. And oddly enough, we had one experience with him where it seemed like this guy actually had some psychokinetic abilities, because he was raging at us, and we were on this island, Cedar Key, when suddenly it was like an earthquake. The room started shaking, the blinds started shaking. There was a television up in a closet, and I thought it was going to fall down. And then we started checking around, went to the city hall, and there was no earthquake at all. It was just happening in that room.
Telekinetic.
Yeah.
Well, there's 2 reasons why it's not so prevalent today. Number one, there are less heavy-duty dark entities here than there were, because people like us are clearing them out. And secondly, every one of us is elevated up a little more, so we're more. The people who were skeptical yesterday aren't so skeptical today, so they're not as likely to fall in line with someone else's teaching. That says you can't do these things. Yeah. And to be fair, the reason people challenge this kind of work is because they are afraid that they might be wrong, because they chose to follow someone else's belief or belief system. And in doing so, they've kind of wrapped up their own ego and personality in following, rather than tuning into their own wisdom channel, right, and knowing this. So I think there are fewer, but at the same time, there can be greater threats. And the more visible you are, the more likely you can be caught up in that, until you hit a certain plateau. And once you hit that plateau, and I think you guys probably are above it, then there's nothing there that can touch you. So it isn't even a possibility, because you're already operating, let's say, at 5D. So that stuff it's it's like the child taking a swing at you and you're holding their head. They're not going to get close.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I've used something for like psychic protection before, but it fits very well with the golden sheets, like this sense of, just kind of being wrapped, and you can wrap yourself, wrap your property in the protection of the golden sheets. It's interesting.
One of the things that they showed me recently is that they can make themselves into a cone, so that you could have the energy going, up in a cone kind of a thing, and it could go high, and it has a spiral effect. And what that does is anything that hits then is going to go right up that channel and be less of an impact.
Yeah.
Now, do you run into people who are religious and attack you on that basis?
Not so much. I keep a low profile in those communities. And it's funny. I am always surprised when I hear polarized statements from people. And as soon as I hear polarized statements, I know to steer clear. And they could be polarized statements about religion. They don't believe in Jesus Christ. They could be polarized statements about, some other aspect of spirituality that we believe, reincarnation, let's say. It might be something about polarity about politics. I'm blown away.
Or a combination of all.
Yeah, right.
And what I now understand is a lot of this is coming at us as a beamed energy. So people who have weak constitutions, spiritual constitutions, are subjected to the energy that's on the Wi-Fi and on the cell towers and so on. And that energy is, and by the way, present company accepted, that energy can adversely affect people because it's got programming on it. The programming is got two primary messages: reject, reject, reject. The second message is forget, forget, forget. So initially you hear something new and you might reject it. Now, a lot of people who are thinking people and are rising above this, they hear something and they reject it. But then they get to thinking about it and think, maybe there is some truth to that. We all do that periodically. But then they get hit with the forget, forget, forget. So then they forget that they get to that conclusion. So that's one reason why some people are so extreme, because they're literally being controlled by the mass media, the mass communications.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, now tell people where they can find you.
I wanted to ask her one more question. Could we just wrap it up? Could you talk a little bit about the Akashic Records, because you write about this quite a bit in your other books?
Yes. The Akashic Records are a field of data that is available to anyone. I teach a way to get in that's very high. My guides gave me some very specific instructions on how to do this and how to teach it. I do have a school on the Akashic Records, and it's called the Founder Circle. We train people not only on how to open the Akashic Records for themselves and others, but then we also give them marketing training, we give them business training, and we sponsor them. So it's a nice environment for people to get started, to have their own business, and to learn how to do this. And by the way, anyone can do it. And that's a real shock to people. You mean I can't do anything? No, yes, you can. If this is something you want to do, it's very powerful, very amazing, and quite profound. The Akashic Records will help people make better decisions. They will help people open their hearts more, because they will give them information on a situation, a piece of information that they hadn't considered, something that they didn't know. And that powerful information helps them to raise their own vibration and take the whole thing higher. It's very powerful, very, very powerful.
Can the Akashic Records be changed? Because that's what Ken teaches.
That they can be changed?
That they can be changed or altered in some way. Like if you,
they can,
in a past life, you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You can change your past, which would change the records. Not changing it at the record level. You're changing it at the experience level. So it is, for sure you can change the past. I teach that as well. But when you change the past, then the records change automatically, change with you. And there are times that we're in the Akashic Records where a client or a situation occurs and there's some kind of, I'll call it an aha, a shift in a belief system or something. And that happens in the records, but you're not changing the records. The person is changing their self-perception or the experience, and that automatically changes the records.
I think what I'm talking about is if, let's say, in a past life, you made a contract with something or someone, or maybe a contract's the wrong word, or an agreement.
Yeah,
And,
but-
and that, can that be changed?
Yeah, absolutely. I've changed lots of contracts.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay.
that's not Akashic Records. Again, it's kind of like the Akashic Records are just like the receiver. They're just collecting
Okay.
data. It's not a thing that is a controller. We're the controller, and we're changing the data that goes into it, and we can do that. And absolutely. And I actually teach people how to change their contracts. And it's a very interesting thing because a lot of times people think they're stuck, and yeah, you're stuck because you made this contract, but then just change the contract. Don't get caught up in resistance. Do something about it.
Interesting.
So is Akashic Record a good method of tuning into your past lives through the Akashic Record? Or?
You know, this is a very good question. A lot of people want to know about their past lives. And I, frankly, feel very strongly that knowing about your past lives isn't such a big deal. And that who you are today is a compilation of all that anyway.
Yeah.
And knowing about your past lives to me is an ego trip. Unless there's some compelling thing that you did in the past that you need to go back and fix. And that does happen. So knowing about your past lives is knowable in the Akashic Records, certainly. I usually don't take those questions, but my students do. They're not afraid of it. I feel very strongly that now is the most important time.
Yeah.
Right.
The present.
Yeah.
And really, you may be linked to that person's past life, but it's really a different person, right? I mean, it's not
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
You know, for example, I know I was a queen in Egypt. I know who I was, but I don't go around telling people this because I think it's aggrandizement. I think it's, you know, it's both good and bad, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I
Well,
have,
explained your interest in Egypt,
yeah.
right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. As a matter of fact, we're putting together a trip to go to Egypt next year in October, I think it is.
Okay.
Oh, no,
Wow.
May. We're going to go in May. So
That
we're going to
sounds
get on
very-
the stick here.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. This has been great
Well,
having
this has
you
been
here.
fascinating. We need to have you on again and just spend a couple hours talking.
So people can
I
reach
have a lot of questions.
at the Saint
What?
Germain Mystery School, and people can reach
Okay.
me at the Saint Germain Mystery School .com, and or if you just Google my name, Maureen Saint Germain, you can find me. And my books are all available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Inner Traditions, and our website as well. If you buy my newest book, Living Your Best 5D Life, there is a link somewhere on my website that allows you to download some additional meditations.
Oh,
Okay.
And you can also get all of my meditations on the app called Illuminate,
Okay.
available on Android and iPhone.
Great.
okay. Great.
Thank
This
you
has been
very
great.
much.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
My pleasure. It's been a blast. You guys are great.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I know.
Bye.